The Ashen Key Murders, Part 2. Mayfair, for 10 a.m. Graves, Whitmore, and Eleanor returned to 221 Harrow Street under the cover of darkness. The city streets were empty, but the weight of unseen eyes pressed against them. Inside the study, Graves tossed his coat over a chair and poured himself a glass of scotch. For once, he didn't offer one to Whitmore. The doctor noticed. "We were standing right next to him," Whitmore said, rubbing his face. "Whoever took that shot, they had a clear view of all of us. They could have killed us too," Eleanor murmured. Graves exhaled. "But they didn't." He set his glass down with a sharp clink. Whitmore leaned against the desk. "Why not?" Graves turned the blackened key over in his palm. "Because they want us to keep playing." Eleanor shivered. "This isn't a game." Graves gave a slow, knowing smile. "That's where you're wrong, Miss Blackwood." He gestured to the two blackened keys now resting side by side on his desk. "This is very much a game, and the society is waiting to see how we play it." Whitmore folded his arms. "And what do you propose we do?" Graves took a slow sip of his drink. "Find them first." He turned his attention to the two keys. Both identical. Both burned black. But they had been found in different places, one at the site of a murder, the other buried by a man who tried to escape. Eleanor's voice was quiet. "If the society is picking people for initiation, there must be a way they choose their candidates." Graves nodded. "There will be records. A list of names. Somewhere in London, there is a ledger containing every person marked by the Ashen Key Society." Whitmore scoffed. "And where do you propose we find that?" Graves smiled faintly. "We start with the ones who disappeared." Eleanor looked at him sharply. "You mean?" Graves leaned forward, his fingers steepled. "The Club of the Forgotten." Whitmore frowned. "What in God's name is that?" Graves' eyes gleamed. "An underground haven for the damned. A place where men who tried to leave the society go to drink away their ghosts." He tapped his fingers against the desk. "And I have a feeling that one of them is still alive." Eleanor inhaled sharply. "Who?" Graves exhaled, his smirk sharpening. "A man they call the Ratcatcher." Whitmore groaned. "Why do I feel I won't like him?" Graves downed the last of his scotch, grabbed his coat, and stood. "Because, doctor," he said, striding toward the door, "the only thing more dangerous than a man hunted by the Ashen Key Society," he slipped his revolver into his coat, "is a man who once hunted for them." Chapter 8. An Unexpected Confession. The Club of the Forgotten, 5:02 a.m. The streets of London were quiet as Alistair Graves, Dr. Jonathan Whitmore, and Eleanor Blackwood moved through the labyrinthine alleys of Limehouse, a district where the law seldom reached and where whispered secrets carried more weight than gold. Ahead of them, half hidden in the swirling fog, loomed an unmarked tavern, a decrepit building slouched against its neighbors, its windows dark, its sign missing. To the untrained eye, it was abandoned. But Graves knew better. "This is it," he murmured. Whitmore looked skeptical. "This place doesn't look like a secret club. It looks like a condemned building." Graves smirked. "Which is precisely why it's the perfect place for one." Eleanor pulled her cloak tighter, glancing around. "You're certain we'll find someone here?" Graves stepped forward, rapped his knuckles twice on the wooden door, then paused before knocking 3 more times. For a moment, silence. Then a rustle from within. A metal peephole slid open, revealing a single bloodshot eye. A gruff voice muttered, "Password." Graves tilted his head. "We are the Forgotten." The eye squinted. Then, after another moment, there was the clank of a heavy bolt being drawn back. The door creaked open just enough for them to slip inside. The moment they stepped inside, the air thickened. The scent of old whiskey, damp wood, and regret clung to the walls. A single lantern swung from the ceiling, casting long, flickering shadows over the ragged patrons hunched at tables, drinking their memories away. These were men who had once stood among London's elite, bankers, officers, judges, politicians. But their faces were hollow now, their fine suits frayed at the edges. The Club of the Forgotten was not just a bar. It was a graveyard for the living. A bald man with a scar running down his jaw leaned against the bar, watching them with open suspicion. "You've got the wrong place," he muttered. Graves strode forward with an easy confidence. "No, I don't." The man narrowed his eyes. "I'm looking for someone," Graves continued. "A man they call the Ratcatcher." At the mention of the name, the entire tavern fell silent. The bartender stiffened. A few men exchanged uneasy glances. One of them, a frail-looking man with a shaking hand, whispered, "You shouldn't say that name." Graves smiled thinly. "That means he's here, doesn't it?" A slow scraping sound filled the room, a chair being pushed back. In the farthest corner, away from the dim light, a figure sat alone. A man wrapped in a tattered coat, hunched over a glass of something dark. His fingers drummed against the table in slow, rhythmic beats. Graves walked toward him, Whitmore and Eleanor following close behind. The man did not look up as Graves reached the table. Graves pulled out a chair and sat. "You're the rat catcher." The man let out a soft chuckle, shaking his head. "Haven't been called that in years." His voice was low, gravelly, worn from whiskey and too many sleepless nights. Graves studied him. "Then what do they call you now?" The man took a slow sip of his drink, then finally looked up. One of his eyes was milky white, blind. The other was sharp, calculating, filled with ghosts. "They don't call me anything," he murmured, "because everyone who still knows my name is already dead." For a long moment, Graves simply observed him. The man's movements, his breathing, the subtle flickers of emotion that passed over his face. Then he spoke. "You were an enforcer for the Ashen Key Society." The rat catcher smiled, a slow, humorless thing. "I was worse than that," he murmured. "I was their executioner." Eleanor inhaled sharply. Whitmore muttered a curse. Graves, however, remained impassive. "How many did you kill?" The rat catcher tilted his glass, watching the amber liquid swirl. "I lost count after 20. His voice was devoid of remorse. Eleanor's hands clenched into fists. "And you still drink to forget them?" The rat catcher smiled again, but this time, there was something broken in it. "No," he said softly. "I drink because I remember every single one." Graves leaned forward. "Tell me about the society's ledger." The rat catcher exhaled. "So that's what you came for." He set his drink down with a soft clink. "The ledger isn't just a list of members. It's a record of every person they've ever marked for initiation." His good eye flicked to Graves. "Once your name is in that book, there are only two ways out." Graves already knew the answer. "Kill or be killed." The rat catcher nodded. "And once your task is complete, they brand you as one of their own. You become part of the machine." Whitmore exhaled. "And the ones who refuse?" The rat catcher's smile vanished. "Their deaths are arranged." Graves drummed his fingers against the table, processing. "Where is the ledger kept?" The rat catcher hesitated. "You don't want to go looking for it, Graves." Graves' eyes gleamed in the lantern light. "I assure you, I do." The rat catcher studied him for a long time. Then, finally, he sighed. "It's in the Hollow Archive." Eleanor frowned. "Where is that?" The rat catcher smirked. "Beneath the city." Graves tilted his head. "Elaborate." "The Hollow Archive is the Society's vault of secrets." The rat catcher's fingers tapped against his glass. "It's where they store their records, their blackmail, their history. A hidden library beneath London's oldest district." Whitmore muttered, "Let me guess. It's impossible to reach?" The rat catcher shrugged. "For most people, yes." He leaned in, lowering his voice. "But there's a way in." Graves leaned closer. "Tell me." The rat catcher smirked. "There's a key." Eleanor's brow furrowed. "Another blackened key?" "No." The rat catcher reached into his coat and pulled out something small, silver, and ornate. "This key," he murmured, setting it on the table. Graves picked it up, examining the delicate engravings. "The Hollow Archive is hidden beneath St. Bastian's Cathedral." The rat catcher's voice dropped. "The entrance is locked. This is the only way in." Whitmore's lips parted in realization. "You stole this from them." The rat catcher grinned. "Which is why they'll kill me the moment they find out." Graves slipped the key into his pocket. "Then I suggest you disappear." The rat catcher downed the last of his drink. "I already have." He stood, throwing a few coins onto the table. Without another word, he vanished into the shadows. Graves exhaled, turning to Eleanor and Whitmore. "We have what we need." Eleanor whispered, "So what now?" Graves smirked. "Now, we break into the Ashen Key Society's most guarded secret." Chapter 9. Through the Looking Glass. St. Bastian's Cathedral, 3:45 a.m. The towering spires of St. Bastian's Cathedral loomed against the inky sky, its ancient stones bathed in the pale glow of gas lamps. Fog curled around its Gothic arches, slithering between its carved statues of seraphim and saints, their weathered faces eroded by time and London's relentless soot. To the unsuspecting, it was just another relic of the city's history. But Alistair Graves knew better. Beneath this sacred ground lay the Hollow Archive, the vault of secrets belonging to the Ashen Key Society. The key to their inner circle. And now, thanks to the rat catcher, he held the means to enter it. Graves stood at the iron gate of the cathedral's courtyard, his coat drawn tight against the chill. Dr. Jonathan Whitmore adjusted his gloves beside him, glancing warily at the cathedral's darkened windows. "We're breaking into a church," Whitmore muttered. "I hope you're aware that this is technically blasphemy." Graves smirked. "Technically." Behind them, Eleanor Blackwood stood shrouded in her cloak, her breath misting in the cold air. Her hands were steady, but her eyes betrayed her nerves. "This place feels wrong," she murmured. "Like something is watching us." Graves nodded. "It is." Whitmore exhaled sharply. "Lovely. Well, shall we trespass into London's most well-guarded crypt?" Graves reached into his pocket and retrieved the silver key. It was small, delicate, engraved with a series of arcane symbols along the shaft, ones he did not recognize. But they didn't need to understand the key. They only needed it to work. "Stay close," Graves murmured, pushing open the heavy cathedral doors. They entered into silence. The interior of the cathedral was a hollow cavern of stone and shadow. Moonlight filtered through its stained glass windows, casting eerie kaleidoscopes across the marble floor. Rows of wooden pews stretched toward the altar, empty and abandoned. Candles flickered at the far end, their flames barely disturbing the darkness. The cathedral was asleep. But Graves knew better. "We're being watched," he murmured. Eleanor tensed. "By whom?" Graves scanned the empty pews, the high archways, the alcoves where figures of saints stared blindly into the void. Everything was still. Too still. Then he saw it. A figure in the farthest pew, draped in shadow. Watching. Whitmore cursed under his breath. "Of course there's someone here." Graves held up a hand. "Stay back." He approached the silent figure cautiously, his footsteps barely making a sound against the polished stone floor. As he drew closer, he saw the telltale glint of something metal in the figure's hands. A rosary. The figure did not move, but when Graves finally stood before them, he recognized the face beneath the hood. A man in his 60s, his features worn and lined, but his eyes sharp with something unspoken. Father Matthias. Graves had met him once before, years ago, during an investigation involving stolen relics. The priest had always carried an unsettling presence, as if he knew more than he ever let on. Matthias exhaled softly. "Mr. Graves." Graves tilted his head. "You were expecting me?" Matthias smiled faintly. "The ones who seek the hollow archive always come here eventually." Whitmore and Eleanor had approached cautiously, but Matthias paid them no mind. Graves narrowed his eyes. "You know about the archive?" Matthias nodded slowly. "I have known of its existence for many years." Eleanor swallowed. "Then, you're one of them?" Matthias let out a quiet laugh. "No, child. But I know who walks these halls in the dead of night." His fingers tightened around the rosary. "And I know where they keep their sins buried." Graves reached into his coat, producing the silver key. He held it up between two fingers. "Then tell me how to open the door." Matthias studied the key with somber recognition. Then, to their surprise, he rose from the pew. Wordlessly, he gestured for them to follow. Matthias led them past the grand altar, into the cathedral's eastern wing, an area reserved for the clergy. The air grew heavier, the scent of burning incense and old parchment clinging to the walls. At the end of the corridor, the priest stopped before a carved relief of an angel set into the stone wall. Its wings were outstretched, its face tilted downward as if in mourning. Matthias turned to Graves. "The Ashen Key Society was not always what it is today," he murmured. "Once, it was something different. Something older." He traced a finger over the angel's stone hand, pausing at the wrist. "Their secrets are kept here, beneath this place of worship." He exhaled. "But make no mistake, there is nothing holy about what lies below." Graves stepped forward, studying the relief. He could see it now. The faintest outline of a keyhole, nearly invisible against the angel's palm. "This is it," Whitmore muttered. Graves nodded. He reached for the silver key and pressed it into the stone. For a moment, nothing. Then, a deep, mechanical click. The wall shuddered, dust drifting from its crevices. With the groaning sound of old gears, the entire relief slid backward, revealing a darkened passage beyond. A staircase, carved deep into the earth. Eleanor let out a breath. "God help us." Matthias looked at Graves one final time. "Beyond these steps, you will find what you seek," he murmured. "But you will also find what the society has been trying to bury." His voice darkened. "Some knowledge is a curse, Mr. Graves." Graves gave a slow smile. "Then it's fortunate I've never feared curses." Without another word, he stepped past the threshold, descending into the hollow archive. Into the darkness. Chapter 10, Shadows in the Cathedral. The Descent into the Hollow Archive, 3:58 a.m. The ancient stone steps spiraled downward into total darkness, the air thick with dampness and decay. Alistair Graves moved first, his every step careful and measured. The walls were damp, the scent of earth and mold clinging to them. Dr. Jonathan Whitmore followed close behind, gripping his oil lantern with a white-knuckled grip. Eleanor Blackwood descended last, her breath shallow, the flickering glow of the lantern casting elongated shadows against the walls. Behind them, the hidden entrance slowly sealed shut, the grinding of stone against stone echoing through the chamber. They were locked in. Lovely, Whitmore muttered. Just what we needed, an underground tomb with no exit. Graves smirked. Then let's ensure we don't need one. The staircase led into a long, arched tunnel, carved into the bedrock beneath St. Bastian's Cathedral. Graves' sharp eyes scanned the walls, worn carvings of keys, serpents, and unblinking eyes adorned the stone. Symbols of the Ashen Key Society. Eleanor ran her fingers over one of the carvings, frowning. This wasn't just built as a vault. This was a place of worship. Graves nodded. Or something far worse. Ahead, the tunnel split into two separate paths. One path curved sharply left, vanishing into a corridor of iron-barred gates. The other descended deeper, where the air seemed to press against them, thick and stifling. Whitmore exhaled. Let me guess. The more ominous path is the correct one? Graves stepped forward. Naturally. Without another word, they followed the descending tunnel, the ground beneath them shifting from rough stone to ornate tiles, proof that the archive had been expanded over centuries. Then, suddenly, the tunnel opened into a vast underground hall. A chamber stretched before them, massive and circular, its dome ceiling hidden in shadows. Towering shelves of books, scrolls, and ledgers lined the walls, each bound in cracked leather and ancient parchment. At the heart of the room stood a raised stone dais, where an ornate desk sat beneath an elaborate chandelier of iron keys. Rows of locked cabinets, some as tall as men, loomed along the far side of the chamber. Eleanor inhaled. This place. Whitmore swallowed. It's a library of secrets. Graves' sharp eyes scanned the chamber. This was the Ashen Key Society's greatest vault of knowledge. Every scandal, every crime, every act of corruption, it was all recorded here. And somewhere in this room was the ledger they sought. The Society has been documenting its movements for centuries, Graves murmured. If they're marking initiates for their final test. He turned to Eleanor. Your father's name will be in one of these ledgers. Eleanor's breath hitched. Then let's find it. Graves moved toward the desk on the dais, his fingers brushing against the aged surface. An inkwell and quill sat untouched. The ledgers were meticulously arranged, each marked with a Roman numeral. Graves selected a thick, leather-bound tome from the top of the pile. Gold lettering gleamed against the spine. Initiates, 1871 to 1884. This is it, he murmured. He placed the book on the desk and flipped it open. The pages were filled with names, written in perfect, slanted script. Beside each name was a date, the moment they had received the Ashen Key. Eleanor leaned over his shoulder. Find my father's name. Graves scanned the entries, his fingers trailing down the list. Then he saw it. Victor Blackwood, marked October 2nd, 1879. Beside his name, another marking. A symbol of a dagger. Whitmore frowned. What does that mean? Graves' expression darkened. It means he was chosen for the final test. Eleanor paled. And the ones who pass? Graves flipped forward, searching for his name among the list of successful initiates. But there was nothing. Victor Blackwood's name was only in the ledger of the marked, never in the ledger of the accepted. Eleanor's hands trembled. That means he never finished the test. Whitmore swallowed. Then he was. Eleanor shut her eyes. Killed. The silence that followed was thick, suffocating. Then a sound. A soft click. Graves froze. He knew that sound. The sound of a gun's hammer being drawn back. A voice cut through the silence, smooth and controlled. I must admit, Mr. Graves, I expected you to be clever. Graves turned slowly. Lucian Thorne stood at the edge of the chamber, his golden eye glinting in the candlelight. In his gloved hand, a pistol. Whitmore swore under his breath. Thorne sighed. Breaking into the archive? That was a mistake. Graves smirked. Then why are you smiling? Thorne chuckled. Because you have no idea what you've just walked into. Then, another movement. From the shadows of the bookshelves, figures emerged. 5 men, dressed in dark coats, their faces obscured by masks. Each carried a revolver. Eleanor took an involuntary step back. "It's a trap." Graves exhaled. "Of course it is." Thorne's voice was calm. "This vault is a sacred place. The moment you set foot inside, the society was alerted." He gestured toward the ledger on the desk. "You wanted the truth, Mr. Graves?" His golden eye gleamed. "Then here it is. No one leaves the hollow archive alive." A cold hush filled the chamber. The masked men raised their weapons. Graves' mind worked at lightning speed. They were surrounded, outnumbered, but he wasn't done playing yet. His fingers subtly brushed against the cane at his side, feeling the hidden steel blade within. Then he moved. Chapter 11. The Disappearance of Dr. Whitmore. The Hollow Archive, 4:05 a.m. The moment Lucy and Thorne uttered the words, "No one leaves the Hollow Archive alive," Alistair Graves knew there was only one way out. Through violence. The 5 masked enforcers surrounding them raised their pistols, the metallic clicks of cocked hammers echoing through the chamber. Thorne stood calmly at the threshold, his golden eye glinting in the dim candlelight, watching Graves like a predator about to enjoy the final moments of a cornered prey. Eleanor Blackwood gripped the edge of the desk, her breath quickening. Dr. Jonathan Whitmore stood beside her, his body rigid with tension, but his eyes darted, calculating. They had only seconds. Graves' fingers tightened around the head of his cane, feeling the hidden blade within. He forced a calm, slow smile, tilting his head as though entirely at ease. "Thorne," he murmured, buying time. "You should know by now that I never do well with ultimatums." Thorne smirked. "And yet, here we are." The enforcers stepped forward, weapons steady. Graves saw one of them hesitate. Just the slightest twitch of a finger. And that was all he needed. In a blur of motion, Graves ripped the hidden blade from his cane, twisting it like a serpent striking from the dark. Before the nearest enforcer could fire, Graves was already upon him. The dagger flashed. A quick slash across the man's forearm. His gun clattered to the floor. A gunshot cracked. One of the others had fired. Graves spun away, the bullet grazing his coat. Whitmore grabbed a heavy ledger from the desk and swung it into the second enforcer's jaw, sending the man staggering. Eleanor lunged back, knocking over a candle, sending scrolls and parchments ablaze. Smoke curled through the air. The archive was on fire. Lucy and Thorne remained still, watching as the chaos erupted before him. "Kill them," he said calmly. The remaining 3 enforcers moved to obey, raising their pistols. Graves grabbed Eleanor, shoving her toward the corridor. "Run." Whitmore had just enough time to shove over a heavy bookshelf, sending a cascade of ancient tomes and dust into the attacker's path. "Go, go," he yelled. Graves turned to follow, but the gunmen were already recovering. A shot rang out. Whitmore staggered. Graves' heart seized. Whitmore stumbled forward, clutching his side. A red stain blossomed beneath his coat. "Jonathan!" Eleanor screamed. Whitmore gritted his teeth, still standing, but his movements were slower now. Graves turned just in time to see an enforcer raising his pistol for a killing shot. No time to think. No time to hesitate. Graves threw his dagger. The blade sank into the enforcer's throat. The man choked, gurgled, and fell. "Jonathan, move!" Graves shouted, grabbing Whitmore's arm and dragging him toward the exit. They raced up the stairs, their boots hammering against stone. The heat from the fire roared behind them, consuming the archive in black smoke. Then another shot. A scream. Graves spun. Eleanor froze in horror. Whitmore was gone. For one agonizing second, Graves saw nothing. No body. No sign of impact. Then movement below. One of the masked enforcers had tackled Whitmore, dragging him into the darkened corridors beneath the archive. The gunshot had been a warning. Not to kill. To take. "Jonathan!" Eleanor gasped. Graves was already moving. He plunged back into the smoke-filled chamber, his vision blurring from the fumes. Whitmore's voice muffled. Struggling. Then gone. A hidden passage in the wall, closing before Graves could reach it. He slammed against the stone, but it was too late. Whitmore had vanished. The fire raged through the hollow archive. The heat was blistering. Graves turned, grabbing Eleanor by the wrist and dragging her up the stairs. There was no time. The flames swallowed the vault, the ceiling cracking as stone collapsed behind them. They burst through the hidden entrance, the rush of cold air gasping against their faces. Then the final collapse. The stone door sealed shut, burying the hollow archive forever beneath St. Bastian's Cathedral. Graves stood panting, his coat blackened with soot. Eleanor was trembling. "Jonathan," she whispered. Graves' jaw tightened. He stared at the sealed passage. And for the first time in years, he felt rage. Pure. Unfiltered. He turned to Eleanor, his voice deadly quiet. "We get him back." Eleanor swallowed, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "But how?" Graves' expression darkened. "They took him for a reason." His fingers tightened into a fist. "Which means he's still alive." A pause. Then, very softly for now. The world was dark. Dr. Jonathan Whitmore woke to the damp scent of stone. His head throbbed, his side ached, but he was alive. Barely. Metal clanked. He tried to move his arms, but found them bound. Shackles. Cold iron, fastened to the wall. A faint drip-drip echoed somewhere in the distance. Then, a footstep. A figure approached. Through the dim light of a single lantern, Lucien Thorne stepped forward, smiling. "Dr. Whitmore," he murmured. "You and I are going to have a long conversation." Whitmore's breathing quickened. "Where am I?" he demanded. Thorne exhaled softly. "Somewhere, quite special." His golden eye glinted. "Welcome to the Ashen Key Society, Doctor." Chapter 12. The Hidden Chamber Beneath London. Unknown location, 4:45 a.m. Dr. Jonathan Whitmore's world was a haze of pain and darkness. His limbs were numb from the cold, his wrists bound in iron shackles, fastened to a damp stone wall. His vision swam as he lifted his head, the flickering glow of a single lantern casting long shadows against moss-covered bricks. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and candle wax. Water dripped somewhere in the distance, the steady drip, drip, drip echoing like a ticking clock. He wasn't dead. Not yet. But he was a prisoner. And across from him, standing with an eerie calmness, was Lucien Thorne. Thorne adjusted the cuffs of his immaculate black coat, his golden eye glinting in the dim light. His other eye, his real eye, was as sharp as a scalpel, watching Whitmore with amusement. "I imagine you're in some discomfort," Thorne murmured. Whitmore exhaled through gritted teeth. "Oh, just a little." Thorne smirked. "Then I apologize for the accommodations. This place was not designed for guests." Whitmore tested the shackles. Solid. No weakness in the chains. His legs weren't bound, but his body was weak from blood loss. His wound, where the bullet had grazed his side, was bandaged. Thorne must have seen his confusion because he chuckled. "We wouldn't want you to die just yet," he said. "That would be premature." Whitmore's mind raced. He had no idea where he was, but it was underground. Deep. He could feel the pressure of the earth above them, the weight of stone pressing down. Somewhere beneath London. Somewhere no one could find him. His throat was dry. "What do you want?" Thorne's expression didn't change. "Oh, it isn't what I want, Dr. Whitmore." He stepped closer, his boots echoing on the stone floor. "It's what they want." Whitmore tensed. From the darkness behind Thorne, two more figures emerged. Men in black suits, their faces hidden by porcelain masks shaped like featureless skulls. Society enforcers. One of them carried a small wooden box. The other held a candle, its flame barely flickering in the damp air. Thorne turned slightly as the enforcer with the box stepped forward. With careful precision, the man opened it. Inside, resting on a cushion of black velvet, lay a single blackened key. Whitmore's stomach dropped. Thorne smiled. "You already know what this means." Whitmore's breath came short. "You're trying to initiate me." Thorne exhaled softly. "Trying?" "No, Doctor." His golden eye gleamed. "You have already been chosen." The masked enforcer took the blackened key from the box and held it out. A silent offer. An invitation. Whitmore stared at it. His pulse thundered in his ears. "You can't be serious." Thorne gave him a patient smile. "Oh, I am. And so is the society." He tilted his head. "Consider this a rare privilege. Very few outside our ranks are given the choice." Whitmore scoffed. "Choice?" He lifted his bound wrist slightly. "Yes, I can see that." Thorne chuckled. "Ah, but that is merely precautionary. You must understand, we deal in loyalty. If you accept the key, you will be freed." Whitmore's mind spun. If they were truly offering him an initiation, then they didn't intend to kill him outright. Not yet. But why? Why him? His jaw tightened. What if I refuse? Thorne's smile vanished. The masked enforcer with the candle stepped forward. He held the flame close to Whitmore's skin, the heat licking dangerously close. Whitmore didn't flinch. Thorne watched him closely, then sighed. "Dr. Whitmore, Let me make this simple for you. He leaned in. The society is not offering you a choice between life and death. He gestured to the blackened key, still resting in the enforcer's gloved hand. It is offering you a choice between power and irrelevance. Whitmore said nothing. Thorne continued, his voice silken. The Ashen Key Society does not simply exist to manipulate the world, Doctor. We shape it. We ensure that London, this empire, thrives. Whitmore held his gaze. By murdering people? Thorne smiled faintly. By ensuring the right people survive. Whitmore's jaw clenched. And the ones who don't? Thorne didn't blink. They are simply obstacles. A pause. Whitmore's pulse hammered. He knew what this was. A test. A way to see if he could be shaped into something else. The way Graves had been tested. The way Eleanor's father had been tested. Whitmore swallowed. He couldn't fight his way out of this. Not yet. So instead, he tilted his head and asked the only question that mattered. And what must I do to prove myself? Thorne smiled. The masked enforcer took a step back. The blackened key remained extended. Take the key, Thorne said. His golden eye glinted. And kill Alistair Graves. 221, Harrow Street, 5:30 a.m. Graves sat in his study, silent and unmoving. A single candle burned, the wax pooling beside the untouched glass of scotch near his elbow. Eleanor sat across from him, her hands clenched in her lap, her face pale. They took him, she whispered. Graves said nothing. Eleanor swallowed. They took Jonathan. And we don't know where. Still, Graves remained silent, motionless, until finally he spoke. Soft. Low. They won't kill him immediately. Eleanor tensed. How do you know? Graves' fingers drummed once against the table. They took him for a reason. His sharp eyes lifted. Cold and calculating. They want him for something. A beat of silence. Then Eleanor leaned forward. Then we get him back. Graves exhaled slowly. Yes. Eleanor frowned. And how do you propose we do that? Graves reached into his coat pocket. He withdrew the second blackened key. The one they had taken from the man who had tried to bury it. His lips curled into a dangerous smirk. We do what they least expect. He flipped the key between his fingers. We accept their invitation. Eleanor gasped. You're going to let them recruit you? Graves' smirk sharpened. They want to play games? He tilted his head. Then let's play.
Every mystery leaves a mark. And the next case is already unfolding. If you enjoyed the story, subscribe, like, and share. There are more secrets waiting to be uncovered. Join us in the next chapter of A Study in Secrets.